Everybody, I'm Bryan Wessel from Sony Pictures in Los Angeles, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this year's Programmatic Pioneer Summit and happy to share my story around driving organizational change. Now, I realize in this settings that nobody has an opportunity to raise your hand and ask a question, which is unfortunate, I know, but if anyone has any, I just want to let you know that I will be available and happy immediately after this event on LinkedIn to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so let's get right in. The topic of the presentation today is in-housing. And in today's world, it's very difficult to escape headlines around this topic. Everywhere you turn, there's something new around cost savings and enhanced performance, saving money and improving KPIs. Two incredibly important elements of marketing today. But in my opinion, the most important element behind in-housing is creating a team and culture that is able and willing to embrace change. It's about anticipating where the market is going and having the team and tools to be able to turn on a dime at anything that's thrown its way. At Sony Pictures, we began our in-housing effort about 2 years ago, and it was centered around the idea of future-proofing our organization. And during this time, believe me, there have been many ups and downs, but one thing has been constant. We have been able to stay on our toes each and every moment and evolve with the demands of the consumer, the business, and the overall marketplace. So let's face it, we all know this, change is hard. We like to be in our comfort zone. But today, I want to share some insights around Sony's transformation and the change agents that pushed us to evolve each and every step along the way. So today we're going to dive in deep to these 4 categories around the build, the integration, the expansion, and where we are today with automation. So starting off with the build, everyone always asks me, why did you in-house? What were the reasons? What led you to in-house? And for me, the answer was always simple. The changes that we encountered here was the rise of audience platforms. And yes, it's no secret, over the last 5-10 years, there's been incredible changes in consumers and media. People are spending more time on social, they're streaming video, they're glued to their phones. But over the last 3 to 4 years, we've started to see the technology and the data components of all of these platforms really start to expand. And as we saw the data and technology expand, our groups internally at Sony became enamored with all the benefits that this would unlock. We quickly began to see the benefits of being able to reach a massive amount of people in a short amount of time. We were also able to optimize audience and creative very quickly. And in our theatrical business, that was extremely important as we have very short flights in our campaigns. And finally, we had amazing opportunities in measurement, something that we don't always have because we don't own the final consumer in our industry. So as we became more and more accustomed to these platforms, we started to see a major shift in our advertising spend. And as time went on, it was apparent to us that it was very difficult to operate these platforms at arm's length distance. In order to truly harness the power that each of these allow, we had to be close to it. We had to own the data and we had to own the technology platforms for activation. So with all this said, we started to build the idea and started to put together the pitch that we would take to our upper management to allow us to unlock an in-house media and performance team. So the 4 elements that we included in our pitch, one and the most important was the future workforce. We say this time and time again, we wanted to make sure that our team was prepared for where we were going and knowledgeable in-house versus us having to train external parties. We wanted to have better performance. Our belief here was that having boots on the ground would lead to improved campaigns. They would be a team that would sit in meetings with us. They would have skin in the game as they would hear strategies and sales objectives, and all of that would lead to better campaign optimizations and thus better performance. We'd also have opportunities to enhance our customer relationships. We had great value within our first party data stack, and us being able to communicate directly with these individuals would lead to improved performance and improved customer satisfaction. And fourth and finally is the idea of cost savings. we wanted to be able to return back a savings goal to our larger executive team. So we put our pitch together, we took it to the executive team, and it was approved surprisingly in a very short amount of time. So we took one moment to celebrate, and then shortly after, we have what we called our oh shit moment, because all the work that we had done to date was why we wanted to do this and what we would get in return, but we hadn't sat down and thought, okay, so how are we going to build this out? So we quickly had to shift modes to think through what our approach was going to be and what was going to be easiest for us. And our approval, we were approved to bring in search, social, and programmatic media, all three channels. And our initial idea was to do this all at once. We wanted to draw the line in the sand and make sure that we were able to do this in short order. And just to say, thank goodness we didn't, because we uncovered a lot of different things along the way. First was staffing. Our goal to manage these three channels was to have 15 people internally. And if you've had to hire a massive amount of people, you know it's not easy. It's not easy to hire one person. So for us to look at hiring a group of 15 to source good candidates, hire them and onboard them, we knew that we needed more time. Second was the idea of contracts. Working and bringing in-house isn't just about building the team, it's also about building in the technology and bringing in the technology. And in order to do that, you've got multiple different legal contracts that need to take place at once. And we knew that our team just couldn't handle doing a handful at a time. We had to take one at a time in a methodical fashion. And third and finally was this idea of the unknown. We didn't know what we were about to face. We had never done this. And in our idea, it was, let's mitigate the risk. Let's not do this all at once. Let's do this in phases, because we didn't want to handle all the unknowns at once. We wanted to space this out. And so with all of these things considered, the choice that we made to transition our team was a crawl, walk, run approach. It was methodical. We laid out our transition as you see here, and it was over 18 months. And we wanted to make sure that we transitioned one channel at a time, as there was considerable amounts of work that would go in to each of the individual platforms. So we started with programmatic, and our idea with programmatic is that it was the biggest lift. It was gonna be the biggest bite all at once. And that's due to technical reasons and staffing reasons. But at the same time, there's a lot of benefits to making programmatic happen first. It was easiest for us to consolidate our DSPs. We were working with 4 with our agency. We consolidated to 1. Therefore, we only transitioned 1 platform versus 4. And then we eventually built up that 1 into multiple. We also had the opportunity to work with very reputable support partners. We worked with Mighty Hive, who were fantastic, helping us through our transition. And also, we were able to realize immediate cost savings. Usually in the agency advertiser world, there is the largest commission on programmatic, and we're able to show savings with this team immediately. Once programmatic was done, we then made the shift to go with social, and we took the same approach with social. A couple campaigns to get our team onboarded and acclimated, and then we transitioned fully, followed by search. And so this was our original snapshot. This was built, and we followed this for about 6 months. But I want to let everyone know that this idea of in-housing can be a very slippery slope. So quickly, our transition of these 3 platforms that you see here quickly turned into 8. And as we're moving along, we started to see that there were other areas that were attached to performance media that would also make most sense to be internal. So a lot went into driving change across all of these platforms that you see here. Once we were done with the main channels, then we started to look at data and technology, which included reporting tools, as well as in-housing our first-party database, followed by inventory expansion, where we sit today. So as you can see here, this is a lot of change that was derived from a change in consumer behavior. But as we see this behavior change, we know that this team that we're building is going to be able to make switches and acclimate to all of the changes that are to come. And so now that this build is underway, we move on to the second phase of our transition, which is the integration. So with integration, it's easy to say, but I do have to be honest with everyone. Building the team is just half the battle. Once the team is built, the next most important thing that you need to do is integrating your team with your greater organization. And this step can be easily overlooked, but it's incredibly important that if you're interested in in-housing, that you think through all of the different processes and all of the different workflows that are going to change as a result of having this internal team. So I want to talk about two different areas of integration that took place within our greater organization. The first was within the greater media and marketing organization, and the second is with our internal data team. Here's a quick snapshot of how our media and marketing team was structured, specifically with our agency and our internal marketing folks. And like all of you, I'm sure that you have a machine of process behind your organization. You have owners and leaders on each task and a proper communication funnel to follow. The way that we were set up was that our internal team at Sony would oversee holistic title strategies. They would manage executive and talent expectations, and they would work internally managing each respective campaign. Our agency would work on the planning and strategy of the title, work with partner management, creative explorations, performance media, and analytics. And at this time, about 2.5 years ago, it was a linear relationship where all the information was coming from the agency and would be executed internally at Sony. But when we took out performance media from agency and put it on the Sony side, it caused a bit of a wrench in our process because the performance media is a very important element of the campaign. Performance media helps to educate and inform the whole picture of each campaign. So what we had to do was work on a communication practice where the performance media team would be able to communicate how the campaign was performing, not just internally, that there would also be the opportunity to bounce off this performance to the agency team as a whole. And this was a process that had to be reformatted and reformulated as we proceeded down this path. And I recommend everyone, when you're going this direction, to be open and free with everyone, to know that you're going to make mistakes, to know that there's going to be things that break, but to also work on the collaborative efforts to improve the overall process. So after every single campaign, we had meetings to discuss what worked and what didn't. If we ran into a problem, we triaged that problem. We had all groups on board to figure out how exactly this would work. And we documented process each step of this way. And I think all of that combined helped us to build where we are today, which is, again, finally back to being a well-oiled machine. But know that it does not come easy, as there are years and years of institutional knowledge here that will change. In addition to what we have with the media and marketing organization, another benefit that we saw here was with our internal data management and data science team. At the same time as we were in-housing performance media, we also had a separate project for our data stack, which can be used in another setting in another presentation. But the idea of working closely with data and performance media internally at our organization had a ton of benefits for us. Here we are quickly able to realize enhancements and improvements in our workflow and our process. We were quickly able to notice that there was less legal risk. Here we're not sharing our internal data externally with third parties, so that was obviously much easier and our lawyers were much happier about that. Two, we had faster audience upload. So when we wanted to execute and activate an audience from a specific campaign, our team was able to work closely, identify who we wanted to target, upload it, and activate it. And we were also able to start developing a very strong feedback loop where we can share what data works, what data doesn't work, and make sure that we're getting smarter for campaigns down the road and in the future. So that concludes the integration, and hopefully you all see where this is going. We now have the build, we have the integration, and right now at Sony, this is probably a year and a half ago, we're feeling pretty good about the practice that we've built. And once we feel good about this practice, we can never rest, and thus comes expansion. And while expansion was always on the roadmap for Sony Pictures and our performance team, We did encounter a change agent that really set this into warp speed, and that was the COVID marketplace. And we don't need to go into it, but COVID has obviously been devastating. And in a business sense, it was especially devastating in our business, in our theatrical and entertainment world. And so while the theatrical business went on pause, our internal performance team saw this as an opportunity. And we started to reach out to other groups within the Sony family to see if our team could help out these other divisions. And frankly, it was at this point where everything just took off for our performance team. So we quickly went from managing one line of business, which was Sony Pictures, to managing over 8 lines in less than 8 months. This was both in the US and international in some cases. And while again, this expansion was always on the roadmap, the COVID marketplace really set this thing into warp speed. And I must attest, we could not have done this if we did not take the time over the last year and a half to set our team up properly. It all came down to us was the idea of having the right people, the right attitude, and the right tools for us to look at our team and look at what other groups within the family needed help, that ultimately led for us to expand this scope. And throughout the last year, it's been apparent that having the central activation team really pays off in a larger corporation. First, we're able to show benefits of reducing redundancies between all of these different divisions. Everyone has an internal marketing team, but everyone else was working with different agencies for performance media. We were able to consolidate and prove the effectiveness of working with one team, which also allows major opportunity to save money across the board for the larger corporation. We also saw great data enrichment. We can now pass audiences freely between divisions across Sony. This is both first and second party audiences. And big best practice sharing was also a huge element for us. When we were in-housing at the beginning, we were always worried that we would end up on an island, that our internal team wouldn't have the same resources or global network that an agency could have, and this is true. But for the ability for us to build out these separate divisions within Sony proved our own opportunity to develop this internal team with internal viewpoints and diverse accounts, where we do have the ability to share best practices, new technologies, as well as new data possibilities. So all of this here has been an amazing success for us. And we know that this probably would have happened along the lines 3-5 years from now, but internally with COVID, this just happened and it's working extremely well. And all of this leads to our ability to, one, work with these different groups, but also manage the change with our internal team as we saw scope here just explode and become much more expansive and also much more beneficial to the larger company. So here's where we stand today. Over the last 14 months, we've obviously seen major changes. And I think in order to truly push us to automation, it's all due to the fact that the consumer is now more in control than ever before. The consumer is demanding things like entertainment, doctor's appointments, food delivery. All of this is taking place in digital channels. And as consumer behavior becomes more and more reliant on technology, we know that the media world is following suit. So we've talked a lot about the preparation and the importance of a strong foundation. And I think it's safe to say that we set ourselves up for this very exact moment. We have the team, we have the technology, and we have the practice all working well across the organization. And now it's time to improve our buying technology and our buying approach. So as consumer behavior changes and these technology platforms become more important, we are starting to see that media owners are making more inventory available for purchase via the DSP. And the good news is that using this technology is actually allowing us to be more flexible, more data focused, and have better measurement, all things that are incredibly important in our world today. So as we stand today, our performance media team is starting to lean into testing new inventory sources, looking at connected television, digital out of home, radio on audio, and anything else that can be bought via these platforms. And the idea here is that we're not changing the type of media that we're buying. We're still working with all the same partners, but we're changing the method and how we're buying it. And we know that that is a major change for people to adopt. And it does take time. So we do a lot of test and learn in this space. But in order to truly make it work, we've worked time and time again with our internal team, our agency team, and the media owners to ensure that we're evolving this process and working on solutions that can be advantageous, not only to us as a business, but to all the parties here that we're working with. So what's next? I think it's crazy for us to look back and see how much we've grown in just 2 years and how much has changed in our industry and at Sony Pictures during this time. So you know where we've been and you know where we are today, but the 3 things that are on our mind right now of what's coming our way is privacy. There's been major legislative changes with GDPR and CCPA. So we're all working through how we can be more effective and safe with the data that we have. Measurement has been a huge area of change, specifically in the last few months. The announcements that we've seen from Apple and Google are sure to change our approach, specifically in performance media. And our team is actively pursuing new forms of measuring conversions and trying to tell the complete picture of how our campaign is performing. And finally, machine learning is a huge area of focus. We want to use data and technology to improve how we buy and make sure that the media is as effective and efficient as possible. So as you can see, this is a brief story of where we're at today. A 20-minute time slot really doesn't give it justice, but hopefully you can find that these highlights were helpful. And now I'm aware that in-housing isn't for everyone, but if you are in an organization that has spending at scale, has rich data offerings, multiple lines of business, and most importantly, a willingness to change and adapt through the world today, I highly recommend going this route. There's a world of possibilities. You will see improved performance, and I promise you will save money. Thank you for tuning in. Again, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact me at LinkedIn. Hopefully you guys have an amazing rest of the summit, and hopefully we can be there in person next year. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.